You know that feeling when someone new catches your eye and suddenly everything feels brighter? You start smiling at your phone, daydreaming during work, or maybe even replaying every little detail in your head. And don't lie, we've all done this. That spark, that rush of joy and creative energy is pure fifth house energy. It's the part of your chart that rules romance, pleasure, and play. I like to think of it as like that honeymoon stage when you first start talking to somebody and everything that they say is great and every joke that they say is funny, even if it's not. But regardless, fifth house is the fun house. It's the house of romance and creativity, and it's where we often begin our relationship story. So if you want to know more, stick around. You definitely don't want to miss this. Hello, my loves. As always, I hope that this video finds you well and in excellent spirits. If this is our first time meeting, welcome. Hi and hello. My name is Mel. I'm a professional astrologer and sound therapist, and I'm the founder of Divine Feminine Works, where I help people unlock their divinity and discover their magic. So if you're new, welcome. And as always, if you are returning, welcome back. So today's video is all about the fifth house in our natal chart, which, like I said before, covers romance, creativity, self expression. But for the purposes of this series, it's dating. When you want to ascertain your dating and romantic life, you would look to the fifth house. Now, it's important to remember that all of the houses in the natal chart speak to different areas of life. And so our relationship story typically does, hopefully, except for some situations, obviously, starts with dating. So, in this video, we're going to take a little bit of a deep dive into the fifth house and you understand not only what it means and signifies in your life, but where your relationship story begins. So, without further ado, let's jump right in. So, of course, to begin, I'd like you to think about and meditate on this core idea. The fifth house reveals how you give and receive joy. It also represents how you flirt, how you create, and fall in love with life itself. The fifth house is the house of joy. And like I said, it's the beginning of your relationship story. So, how you think about romance, how you feel about romance, and even how you flirt falls within the realm of the fifth house. In astrology, the fifth house is ruled by Leo and the sun, which means it governs self expression, dating, creativity, and pleasure. It's where you let your heart lead. This is why it's so important to understand the fifth house as it relates to your relationship life, your love life, and even the beginning of your relationship story, because it shows where you lead with your heart. As much as so many people want to shut down their hearts, they have cold hearts, rock solid hearts. They don't want to lead with their heart because they've been hurt. Leading from your heart is definitely the first step to a successful relationship. And your fifth house can tell you all about that. All right. So let's get into the signs on the cusp of the fifth house. And what I mean by that is that's just astrology speak for the sign of your fifth house. Now, I want to remind you that I use Western tropical astrology and I use a whole sign house system, which means that when I pull up charts based on this system, every house is a whole sign. If you use a different house system, such as Placidus, and you'll come to understand that a lot of the astrology software defaults to Placidus. If you want whole sign houses, you have to change the house system within the software. So typically, when most people pull up their natal chart on like astro.com or astro-seek.com, they're looking at their Placidus chart. And so sometimes you'll see two signs in one house. But whatever sign starts the fifth house, that is what's known as the house on the fifth. It's the sign on the fifth house cusp. Okay. So wherever your fifth house starts, the sign that's on there on that house is what we're going to be talking about. And again, your fifth house represents your romantic vibe for all intents and purposes. So this is just meant to be a very broad overview. Like you can go really deep into this. So I'm going to be moving through this relatively quickly because we're just scratching the surface in terms of the meaning of the fifth house for each sign. So of course we begin at the beginning, and let's say you've got Aries as your fifth house. You are passionate, direct, you love the chase, and sparks fly fast. I like to think of Aries on the fifth house, or Aries is the fifth house, as the eternal flirt. Loving to flirt, but commitment is kind of a whole other thing. Okay. Next up, if you've got Taurus as your fifth house, you are sensual, affectionate, and grounded. You savor romance slowly. Okay. Gemini as your fifth house, you are witty, flirtatious, and you thrive on conversation and variety. Cancer as your fifth house. You are sentimental and nurturing. Love needs to feel like home for you. Now, keep in mind that again, the fifth house represents the beginning of your relationship story. So, we're talking about when you first meet someone, when you first interact with them, that how you interact with them and how you begin perhaps dating them or courting them is representative of the characteristics of the sign of your fifth house. So, I just want to reiterate that there. Okay. Next up, Leo is your fifth house. You are playful and magnetic. You're also a bit dramatic. Let's just keep it real. All right. You love grand gestures and attention. Virgo is your fifth house. You are thoughtful and sincere. Love for you is shown through care and service. Keeping it moving, let's say you've got Libra as your fifth house. You are charming and romantic. You love partnership and shared beauty. Scorpio as your fifth house, you are intense and magnetic. Passion and transformation go hand in hand for you. Let's say you've got Sagittarius as your fifth house. You are adventurous and spontaneous. You crave fun and freedom in love. Capricorn as your fifth house. You are steady and traditional. Loyalty and effort turn you on. Aquarius as your fifth house. You are quirky and unpredictable. You're drawn to unique and stimulating connections. And then finally, Pisces is your fifth house. You are dreamy and poetic and also deeply romantic. Love is essentially art to you. Okay, so now that we've talked about the signs of the fifth house, let's talk about when you've got planets in your fifth house. And essentially, when you've got planets in your fifth house, this really details how you express love and creativity. Let's say you have the sun or your sun in your fifth house. Love is your stage. You shine the brightest when you are inspired. If you've got your moon in your fifth house, you express affection emotionally and intuitively. If you've got Venus in your fifth house, you're a natural flirt. Okay. Those can be a little dangerous sometimes. All right. Pleasure and beauty guide you. If you've got Mars in your fifth house, you pursue romance with passion and excitement. Let's say you've got Jupiter in your fifth house. This is endless optimism and joy. You attract love through generosity. You've got Saturn in your fifth house. You tend to be cautious at first, but deeply loyal once you open up. Uranus in your fifth house. You're unconventional and spontaneous. You crave a surprise and sudden changes when it comes to love and romance. Neptune in your fifth house, you are extremely idealistic and romantic. Love to you feels like a dream. And finally, if you've got Pluto in your fifth house, you are transformative and magnetic. Love changes you, and you ultimately change love as well. Now, I also wanted to briefly talk about aspects, right? Aspects to your fifth house ruler, planets in your fifth house. Now, I'm not going to go deep into this because this is a whole masterclass unto itself. But essentially, aspects to your fifth house ruler or planets in your fifth house, they show how you create and how you connect. Let's say you have Venus or Mars making an aspect to your fifth house ruler or even planets in your fifth house. All right. This can denote high romantic drive. Okay. Love fuels your creativity. Let's say you have Saturn making an aspect to your fifth house ruler or to planets in your fifth house. This can denote lessons around joy, learning to let your inner child play. And then finally, let's say that you've got Neptune making an aspect to your fifth house ruler or to planets in your fifth house. This can denote fantasy and inspiration. Art and romance blend together. Now, if you want to know more about planetary rulers and if you want to know more about aspects, I've got some resources linked in the description box below that you can check out so that you can delve into those topics further. Okay. But the fifth house reminds us that dating and romance aren't about control, they are about play. I famously love to call the fifth house the fun house. It's the house where you let your inner child live. And so it follows that the beginning of your romantic story should be about play, not about forcing, not about manipulation, and not about control. And when you think about it that way, you can see why a lot of relationships fail to launch or fail to move on to the next level, because rather than enjoying and playing and really having fun with it, people have ulterior motives. They want to control, they want to manipulate, they want to play the game. You can see why that doesn't necessarily work out too well. But either way, the fifth house is your invitation to let love feel like fun again. All right, so let's pause right now for a little moment of reflection and self inquiry. So here's your reflection for today. When was the last time you let yourself experience romance or even pleasure without overthinking it? The fifth house asks, do you still know how to flirt with life? Take a moment to meditate on that and perhaps analyze how you begin your relationship stories, specifically your romantic relationships. Do you begin fun and lighthearted, or are you trying to manipulate and control the situation? So meditate on that for a bit. If you want more insight on how you show up in your relationships and even what your romantic style is like, then click the link below in the description box to take the free seduction style quiz. It's a fun little quiz that'll help you understand your seduction style and even your Venus sign so you can finally understand how you show up in relationships and how to have relationship success. All right. So if you're interested, the link is in the description box below. And then thereafter, come join us over in Cosmic Collective, which is my online private community where we talk about love, dating, and chart chemistry every week during Cosmic Chemistry Fridays. It's like my office hours where I get to answer questions and we go deeper into the week's topics. All right, so if you're interested, you can scan the QR code on the screen right now or hit up the link in the description box below. All right, my love. So that's pretty much all I've got for you for this video on the fifth house and what it means for romance, dating, and creative pleasure. So join me tomorrow where we'll dive into the seventh and eighth houses, which is where romance meets commitment and intimacy and ultimately transformation. That's going to be a juicy one. All right. So you definitely don't want to miss out on that. All right, my loves. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in my next video. Take care.